When you look at an image of a sunset, you do discover many tones of greens and blues that you would not typically recognize as a sunset or sunrise. So that sense of discovery, look actually at pictures of sunsets and being fascinated and surprised by how many colors you have in those photographs. That was a sort of beginning of the work. I work mostly with sculpture, with found materials and industrialized materials. There's a lot of collecting in my practice, and so often my work happens in the studio after collecting many things that I'm interested in. The objects used in the sculptures, either to do with the functionality or design or something to do with the cultural use of the objects. More recently, I started working with public projects, with public sculptures and outdoors projects.
Art on the Underground is Transport for London's contemporary art commissioning programme. So we work with artists to commission new works, which means a newly created work specially for the space that we are considering. Transport for London are developing an extension from Kennington on the Northern Line, and that will be developing 2 new stations at Nine Elms and at Battersea Power Station. And we have been working very closely with the team at Battersea to put forward an artwork within that station construction. We selected Alexandre from a short list of artist proposals that we put together for that station. He connected it so brilliantly with the site in terms of Battersea and the surrounding areas, with the riverside, with the sense of the sky that you see over the river.
We started working about 6 years ago, and it's been a long process of a lot of conversation and developing the concept of the work together. The work is basically consists of 2 large panels facing each other. They are very long. One is about 70 meters, the other one is about 90 meters, or even longer. Each panel has 3 different images, if you like. So it's a prism made of 3 faces on each side, and this is a rotating system. So it's quite a node system of using 3 images in one panel. With the scale of the work, it offers immediately a collective engagement with the work because it's in a huge space. A lot of people will be experiencing the work at the same time. But what I really enjoy is that because of the way that the movement is created, you have the possibility of establishing a very particular and unique experience with the work.
It's a real intelligence that Ali brings to this project, that he is considering very deeply the customer, the person, the passenger, and that's what really excites me about working with Ali. He has a phenomenal understanding of how things feel in space, of how colour and shape create that balance, very strong aesthetic sense, as well as a conceptual interest in taking objects and putting them in another location.
There was something that was equally exciting and slightly scary to work in that location because it's a very well-known and iconic building in London. So that to me was in the beginning, in a way, an obstacle to feel comfortable to work and to feel responsible in a way to respond to that site. It started by, again, which is something that I do often with my work, by collecting images of sunsets and sunrise. I try to also take pictures there around the area in South London. Based on those images, I created these 6 panels that they are divided in 2 mechanisms facing each other. And on each face, you have a gradient that is based on an image of sunset or sunrise. There is a system that moves the panels. So the movement is very subtle. It feels very random. And there is not, it's very hard to follow, the beginning and the end of the movement. But the idea is that the work refers to that idea of a cycle and a day or a routine. To create that movement, we had to compose something that was more like composing music. So we used the idea of rhythm to achieve the best visual composition that we wanted. And I think one important aspect, I keep saying we because I think this work obviously had to involve a lot of people, actually had to work with engineers, architects and designers who was involved from the very beginning, sort of translating the colours in colours that were possible to be read as digital files. And then there's a bunch of other people involved in the fabrication and in obviously installation and many other layers of the work, which is very exciting, but also very different from my natural and usual way to work in the studio, which is very hands-on and it's just me or maybe me and someone else. So I had to really negotiate this process of embracing more people in the work. I also had to expand the work to work with a factory, but basically the factory where the mechanism was fabricated.
We had a lot of conversations with the suppliers in Holland to understand how we could potentially control something of this length. Each of the sections is driven by a drive shaft that runs in the bottom of the frame, and the motor in it has an individual controller. Each one of those controllers is then coordinated by a central Raspberry Pi computer, which lives in a box over there, and that sends the signals to each controller, telling it when to change.
I think what I wanted to do all the time was to make that technical aspect almost invisible to the viewer. So I had to learn many things with engineers and technicians, but I also wanted to use in the most simple, straightforward way. The installation process, it's obviously a very complicated part of the work. This was also like a really complex learning curve for me, which I guess is about not having total control, because it's not something that I can make in my space and then just deliver. I have to be part of a much bigger structure. Often I had to give up on like a specific idea, or that something on that scale, competing, or not competing, but like dealing with other aspects of the architecture, of the functioning of a station. So that was, I learned a lot of things.
It's been really interesting working on this project because it is a brand new station, and that's so rare on London Underground. So we're getting this opportunity to show it to Londoners in one big ribbon cutting moment. And that's been such an interesting process, working in step with Ali as we refine this idea into the ticket hall so that it feels completely ingrained as part of this new Battersea power station, this new part of London.
So one of the biggest challenges for me when I work in public works is to find a good balance in between intruding a public space and being invited to be there. So you want to engage the community, you want to engage the viewers. It's finding that balance of having a strong presence and also not being too intrusive or too invasive. I am in general excited about the idea of this piece being permanent, which I think is amazing, and also the fact that I myself can go there and see many times and hopefully learn and discover new things in the work. So it's a privilege as an artist to have a site that you can talk to the work many times as you want. I think one of the aspects of the work that I personally really enjoy is the possibility of the work offering a very personal, unique relationship with the work, as well as a public experience, a collective experience. So I like the idea that the same person who uses the station every day can see this work in many different times and actually have a completely different relationship with the work. I love the idea that this work has a life, but also has the potential to develop relationships with viewers in different ways, and people can feel that they participate or they own the work. That sense of ownership or sense of partnership with me as an artist